If you ever find yourself in the market for an old colonial home in the United States and maybe Massachusetts or somewhere like Connecticut, you may want to think twice about purchasing it, especially if you have a lot of stuff, because unless it's being refurbished, then likely it has no closets. The reason being is back in the day, the British Crown imposed something called the closet tax. You'd have to pay extra tax to have closets in your home. And Americans who were a little touchy about the monarchy getting into their business decided to forgo closets rather than have this intrusion into their independence. But for the rest of us, our closets are so very important and valuable. Could you imagine what your life would be like if you didn't have closets in your home? Your home would probably be like one of those slalom courses in skiing with just piles of stuff, and you'd have to negotiate around all of them. And if I were to come to your house and look in your closets, what would I find? Maybe all the towels neatly arranged in size and color, all the pants nicely hanging on hangers with the creases down the middle, the shoes all nicely polished, everything boxed up perfectly and labeled in the corner. Or would your closet resemble more like the tornado from The Wizard of Oz? Everything everywhere. As someone once said, there's a reason that closets have doors. It's an absolutely true story. My very first year of studying to be a minister, when I was at Emmanuel College at U of T, I was asked if I would do a service on Boxing Day at a small United Church in Parkdale. Well, I needed the experience and I needed the money, so I said that I would do it. Now, if you know Toronto, you know that once upon a time, Parkdale was one of the chic neighborhoods in Toronto, but the last few decades it's fallen on harder times, and there's some pretty rundown neighborhoods and lots of social problems in the area. Anyway, I went and I did the service. There was only about a dozen people there. And then after the service, a gentleman in the congregation asked me if I'd like to go back to his place and have lunch with him. So I agreed, and we left the church, walked a couple blocks to his apartment building, went up in the elevator, got to his apartment, went inside. Right by the door, there was a closet. So he asked me if he could take my coat. I gave him my coat. He opened the closet, and inside the closet was a full-size Nazi flag, a swastika hanging right in the middle. I'll tell you, it was the fastest ham sandwich I ever ate in my life. Closets really are fascinating parts of people's homes. Unlike kitchens and bathrooms and even bedrooms that have a functional element, closets really are up to us as to what we do with them. They are the home's frontiers, places where there's no rules or expectations, where freedom reigns, and we can basically do as we please. As a result, you might be surprised at how many people have decided they can analyze us based on what we keep in our closets or how we keep our closets. There's a discipline called fashion psychology. And according to fashion psychology, you can figure out someone's personality type by taking a look in their closet. According to one study, there are 5 personality types. So I'm going to share them with you and see if you can figure out which one of these you may be. Number 1 is the pauper. The pauper usually has a closet filled with secondhand clothes or sale items or clothing from thrift shops. They may not love their wardrobe, but the alternative is spending money, which they like even less. Number 2 is the hoarder. You can imagine what a hoarder's closet looks like. Stuff everywhere. You just don't know when something might come in handy one day, and so they keep it all. Who knows when the Herb Tarlick look may come back into style. Number 3, the devaluist. In the devaluist closet, you will find clothes that should have been thrown away long ago. Clothes that are ripped or stained or don't fit particularly well. But the devaluist will wear them because they bring comfort and familiarity. Often this is the person you will see who has their clothing held together by little safety pins, for example. Number 4 is the sentimentalist. Remember that sweater that boyfriend gave you back in 1975? Boyfriend's gone, but you still keep the sweater. The closet of the sentimentalist is filled with symbols from the past that bring feelings of goodness to the present. Or finally, number 5, the identifier. This closet is often filled with designer clothing, Ralph Lauren, Gucci, etc. The identifier likes to dress well and be seen to dress well. Often this person gets their value or their sense of identity from having the best or wearing the best. So what are you based on your closet? Are you a pauper, a hoarder, a devaluist, a sentimentalist, or an identifier? Or maybe at different times you've been all of them, or maybe you're a little bit of each one. So before I go any further, I have to tell you a quick joke. So a guy gets up in the morning and he opens his closet, and he's kind of bleary-eyed, and he's got a mirror hanging on the inside of his closet. He opens his closet, he sees himself, but suddenly thinks that that's somebody inside of his closet, maybe a burglar. Slams the closet door shut, goes right over the phone, and he calls the police. Police officer comes over, opens the door, looks inside, turns to the man, he said, "Why'd you call me? The cops are already here." And I don't hear a lot of laughter on that one. But let's go a little deeper with this. Because closets are not only places where we keep and organize things, it's also where we hide things. I'm about to make a big revelation to my parents who are watching down in Toronto. Mom, Dad, you know that closet downstairs in the spare room? You know the one I'm talking about. Every year you put Christmas presents in there, and every year I found them. But of course it can be more profound than that. Closets can be places where we hide things about ourselves that we may not be that proud of, or that we can't quite come to terms with, but we can't quite get rid of. Old letters, symbols or trinkets that represent a former relationship or a missed opportunity. In the dark corners of our closets, there can lurk all kinds of symbols that I've found would reveal something about ourselves that we don't necessarily want the world to know about ourselves, and so we hide them away. Just as closets can reveal something about us, they can also hide things about us. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. That's why closets have come to represent social and psychological secrets that we have. We talk about having skeletons in our closets, or secrets about ourselves that we're not too keen on revealing to others. And of course, we use the term to come out of the closet. In other words, finding the courage to step across a threshold of a hidden life or hidden identity, taking it from the shadow of secret places into the light of revelation, knowing that doing so will result in scrutiny, but with the hope that it will lead us to be able to live our truth, live our freedom. And I'm sure if you spoke with anyone who has had to cross that threshold, they will tell you it was the most difficult journey of their life. But really, that's kind of a journey that we're all invited to take. Because to some extent, whether we know it or not, many of us live a surprising amount of our lives in a closet. I've been doing a lot of interesting research this week on the difference between what psychologists call our adaptive selves and our authentic selves. But before we get there, let me make this faith statement. As Christian people, we believe that all life is created with both value and purpose. That life isn't just some random act of some random event, but that we are part of the creative and imaginative will or process of a creator, of God, however we choose to understand that process and who God may be. The Bible puts this so poetically in Psalm 139. You knit me together in my mother's womb. You knew the days of my life before they were formed. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That's not meant to be understood literally. That is scriptural poetry. Lifting up the creative process of God, it reminds us that our life is to be valued as a sacred expression of a divine life force. That represents our authentic selves. Or as another poet put it, we were born to make manifest the glory of God. In other words, we are born with certain gifts and attributes and abilities and so forth. And this is our authentic self. Again, as a people of faith, we may refer to it as our God-given selves or having God-given abilities. So what happens to that authentic or God-given self? Well, here's where psychology comes in. Very early on in life, we learn that we have to, quote, fit in. For many of us, that was a harsh lesson first learned on the playground when we were told that our shoes weren't the right kind of shoes or that we didn't have the right kind of haircut. What did you feel in that moment? We felt a sense of failure or shame. We don't want to feel those things, so we quickly learn to adapt. We get the shoes that are the brand names and we upgrade our haircut. Or maybe you're going to go to Grandma's house for dinner. And just before you go, your mom says to you, oh, go and take those jeans off and put on a nice pair of slacks with a crease down the middle because Grandma likes you looking nice. And what do we do as children? What's the most important thing for us? We want to please the adults in our life. So we quickly figure out how to play this game, how to become what we think we should become. We get messages early on that we have to adapt our lives to fit in. What begins to happen is that we start getting very good at it. And slowly we start to replace our authentic self by what we call our adaptive self. We start putting together all these messages that we've heard growing up, and we start to create something new, like Dr. Frankenstein pulling all the parts together to create his monster, this self that we then present to the world. And don't get me wrong, because to some extent, we all have to do this. I mean, you'd lose your job if you showed up every morning in your house coat and slippers just because you want to be yourself. Society wouldn't function without some degree of social norms and expectations. But here's the problem. The adaptive self is not your authentic self. Our authentic self then gets pushed deeper and deeper into the closet. What happens when things get pushed deeper and deeper into the closet? They get old, they get dusty, and they get forgotten. And if we're not careful, that wonderful, creative, imaginative spark that God put into you when you were born, that unique giftedness that was knit together in your mother's womb, that light that is fully your own, can go out like a pilot light on a stove. And you can talk yourself into being the person you think you should be rather than the person that you actually are. And the person that you actually are gets nicely boxed up and shoved away into the back of the closet until such time as you remember that it's there or that you have the courage to go and pull it out and open it up. I always appreciated what the spiritualist Wayne Dyer used to say. He used to say the greatest tragedy in life is to die with your music still in you. If we live our adaptive self at the expense of our authentic self, we will never sing the song that God has given us to sing. Your adaptive self versus your authentic self. Which one are you? I'm sure there are some people that are watching this and listening to this and saying, no, you know what? I really am my authentic self. I'm in touch with my inner light. I know my skills and talents that God has given to me, and I'm using them to the best of my ability. I'm comfortable in my own skin. And that's great. Because at some point in your life, you gave yourself permission to be yourself, and you have the courage to follow that through. You are an inspiration. Others might be thinking, no, I totally understand what you're saying. I've become so used to my adaptive self, I've kind of lost touch with my authentic self, that vital, important piece of myself. And for some people, that disconnect can actually be a location thing. Maybe you're great at living your authentic self when you're at home, but then what do you do when you go out? You take that off, you hang it up in your closet, you pull out your adaptive self, and off you go. Let me give you a symbol to illustrate. If you were to drop by my house and come in the front door, the first thing you would see is a big closet. It's the biggest closet in our house. And in that closet, we keep coats and hats and boots and all the things that we need to go outside. Now, when it's just us in the house, That closet door stays open so we can get easy access. But as soon as the doorbell rings, I can guarantee you the next sound you will hear before the door is open is the closing of that closet. Because what's okay for us is not okay for you. That's what we do with the adaptive self. We don't think that our authentic self is good enough for being out there, and so we keep it inside. Oscar Wilde once famously said, "You may as well be yourself, for everyone else is taken." And yet we often aren't, are we? Or listen to what the poet E.E. Cummings wrote. This is golden. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day, making you everybody else, means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight, and to never stop fighting. So what to do about this dilemma? Well, as you can see, I have a prop behind me. This is my closet. There's no door and there's no walls, but it's my closet for the next few minutes anyway. And I have some clothes on hangers. Now, each of these hangers is unique because they all have a message on them. And each of these messages is a tip as to how we can begin to move from our adaptive self and reclaim our authentic self. I like to call this 5 in 5. 5 tips in 5 minutes on how to reclaim our authentic self. I'm going to have a drink of water first. Okay, be ready to go? Number 1. This is how my closet looks. Number 1, remain childlike. Careful, I didn't say childish, but childlike. Jesus once said, "Unless you become like a child, you shall never enter the kingdom of God." Here's the thing. You were never more authentic than when you were a child because you had no choice. You didn't have an adult frame of reference. You could only be yourself. If someone gave you a gift, you didn't say, "Oh, no, you shouldn't have." You accepted the gift. If someone gave you an opportunity to play, you didn't say, no, I have too much to do." You would go and play. If someone gave you a tiara to wear on your head, you wouldn't say, "Oh, this looks stupid." You would wear your tiara and you would be proud of it. If someone said, "There's a cool frog down by the river," you wouldn't think, "Oh, I'm going to get my shoes dirty." You would go and you would see that frog. Don't be so grown up that you forget important childlike qualities. You might be 6 feet tall with a voice as deep as Barry White. You might be a grandmother of a big family, but make no mistake about it. You have a child within you that wants to play. Don't, as a grown-up, forget very important childlike qualities: laughter, play, wonder, curiosity. Be curious about life. That's a great way to begin to reconnect with your authentic self. Number 2. Tell the truth. Make telling the truth a habit. The little white lies we tell ourselves or others to save face or to save ourselves embarrassment actually keep us from developing our authentic selves. When you were a child and you spilled a glass of milk, what happened? If you had good parents, they would have said to you, "It's an accident, don't worry about it, let's just clean this up together." But chances are you heard a different message, didn't you? "Oh, I can't believe you did that. How can you be so clumsy? I'm going to be late for work because now I have to clean this up." And how did it make you feel? Guilty or filled with shame. And so early on you learned to adapt, to cover up your mistakes, to keep yourself from having to take responsibility and then to feel that sense of guilt or shame. Authentic people always take responsibility for their thoughts and actions. Authentic people aren't afraid of failure because they see it as a step towards success. Authentic people don't just say what they think other people want to hear. They speak their truth. with humility but strength. Authentic people have a level of self-awareness and honesty that liberates them from the horribly destructive force of trying to be everything to everybody. Authentic people don't lie to themselves. They claim their own power. Number 3. Be unique, or be proud of your uniqueness. God knit me together in my mother's womb, and I am wonderfully made, says the scripture. Wonderfully made. Maybe you can't play the piano like Elton John, or sing like Celine Dion, or cook like Julia Childs, or hit a three-pointer like Kawhi Leonard. But you are wonderfully made. Claim your uniqueness. I'll bet you Kawhi Leonard can't make a lasagna like you can. I bet Elton doesn't have a garden half as nice as the one you're planning this summer. And sure, Celine can sing, but can she fix a leaky faucet or build a garden shed? You may as well be yourself, because everyone else is taken. We all have some time on our hands right now, so I want to give you an assignment. This is your homework once the service is over. Get a pen and paper and take inventory of all of your skills and gifts and talents. Be honest with what they are. Be proud of what they are. Then ask yourself, are you using them? And don't compare them to other people, because that's your adaptive self speaking. Draw out your authentic self by claiming your own light, by claiming your own unique contribution to your family, to your community, and to your world. A little boy decided he was going to try out for the school musical. And his mom gently tried to talk him out of it, because her son was a great guy, but she knew he didn't necessarily have the skills they were looking for. He really couldn't sing a note. He would fall over his feet when he tried to dance, and his acting was a little suspect. But he was really determined he wanted to try out. Well, the day of the tryouts, the mom was sitting outside in the car waiting for her son to emerge, and suddenly the doors opened. A little guy came running out, threw open the door, he jumped in, he was so excited. His mom said, "Well, did you get a part?" He said, "Yeah, I got a part." She says, "Well, are you singing?" I said, "No." "Are you dancing?" "No." "Are you acting?" "No." She says, "Well, what's your part?" He says, "I'm in charge of clapping and cheering." Now there's a guy who's in touch with his authentic self. Number 4. Take the steering wheel back. It's your journey. Make sure you're the one who's driving. As I keep saying, our adaptive selves are formed in childhood. And when you are a kid, it feels like everybody is driving your life but you. You're told to eat this, to put this on, to stand here, to go there. Again, my parents are watching, so I know I'm going to catch heck for this, but we had a rule in our house at dinner time: we weren't allowed to talk unless spoken to. So now you know why I can't shut up these days. But we all learned at a young age that you fit in by listening to others, that everyone gets to drive your life but you. At some point, we need to take back the steering wheel, claim our voice, claim our truth, and don't let just anyone get that steering wheel back. You have a right to your truth. You have a right to your values and your ideas. You have a right to your opinions. You have a right to your goals and dreams, because you are wonderfully made. Steve Maraboli, the motivational speaker, put it this way: we must all free ourselves from the inauthentic or disempowering stories that we tell ourselves. Is the story that you are living your authentic story? If not, do you have the willingness to question it? What if Rosa Parks believed the story that a black woman must give up her seat on the bus for a white man? What if Gandhi had believed the story that you were only defined by the caste into which you were born? What if Jesus had believed the story that religious people should mind their own business and not get involved in the things of the world? At some point, they all took the steering wheel and they said, "You're not driving this, I am." Your adaptive self might tell you the story that it believes you need to hear to fit in, but ask yourself, would your authentic self agree with that story? Or is it muttering away in the closet saying you've got a better one that you need to discover? And finally, number 5, live within our faith story. As Christian people, we have a rich, beautiful story that we are invited to live from within. It's the Easter story. It's a story of what? It's a story of death. But a death that was not final. Because from that death there came a resurrection. There came a new expression of life. However we choose to interpret that, factually or theologically or even mythically, it is the heart of our faith story. It's the narrative that we are invited to live our lives from within. And if we allow ourselves to live within our faith story, do you know what that means? We cannot fear death. Because death is not an end. It's a gateway. It's a doorway. It's a threshold that leads to something more. Authentic people, people living fully outside of their closet of fear or worry or shame or whatever it may be, are people who are not afraid of death. Let me say it again. Authentic people are not afraid of death because they see death as the doorway to a new expression of life. Here's why this matters. If you've heard everything that I've said today and decided that you want to start living a more authentic life, perhaps you are tired of living out the story that your adaptive self is telling you, then to get there, you're going to need to embrace death. And I know that sounds harsh. It doesn't have to, because death is the threshold to new life. If you want new life, you have to let things go. You may need to let some things die. Maybe some hopes or expectations or dreams. Maybe let go of mistakes that you made in the past or things that are hurting you and hurting just you because you've held on to them. Maybe it's lies that you've told yourself about yourself. Maybe it's a story that you've been living that you know is not your authentic story. The things you have clothed yourself in to adapt to the version of reality that you have also created, let them go. Let them die. It's like cleaning out the closet, getting things that we rid of that we don't need anymore. It's hard, it's painful, because the inauthentic stories that we tell ourselves can be very sticky. But let them go, because we do not have to fear death. I call this the caterpillar effect. A caterpillar lives much of its life living its wrong story. It eats, it crawls, it sleeps, it adapts to the reality of its life. But at some level, a caterpillar knows that there is more. It feels it deep within themselves. Eventually, it gives in to its impulses. It crawls into its closet, so to speak. It dies to its old story. And then when it is ready, it emerges into what it was meant to be all along. It has become its authentic self. It has become a butterfly. So the 5 qualities to regain our authentic self: remain childlike, tell yourself the truth, be unique, grab the steering wheel, and finally, live your faith story. Let me end with this. I shared this on Facebook this week, and so some of you have heard this story. But on Monday, I went for a walk in the forest, and I was all alone on a little trail. I was actually a little bit lost. I wasn't quite sure where I was, but it was beautiful where I was. And I'm walking along, and I heard it before I ever saw it. I heard the sound of something coming towards me, something coming out of the trees. And I looked up just in time to see this creature come down, not 6 feet away from me. I actually had to duck away from it. And it passed over me, and only as it passed could I tell what it was. It was an owl. I've never seen an owl in real life. I could not believe, first of all, how beautiful it was, how huge it was. The wingspan was massive. And the fact that I even saw an owl in the day is kind of a remarkable thing to begin with. Now, some people believe that animals and birds we see are spiritual guides, that they're there to teach us something. I don't know if that's true or not, but I got on my phone and I looked up what an owl represents. An owl is a symbol of two things. Number one, it's a symbol of death. Number two, it's a symbol of transition from death to something more. What a great symbol that is in moving from our adaptive life to our authentic life. Allowing for death, but knowing that it creates something more. Not only is that a good symbol for our individual lives, it's a great symbol for where we are at collectively right now. We are in a season of death right now, not just physical, but in so many ways. But could this also be a season of transition as we look for new ways to live, new expressions of life, new ways to be in relationship with each other and with our world? You know what? Maybe the world has been collectively living an adaptive life. Maybe the closet door is opening for the first time, and what might come out is something a little more real and authentic. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful? Amen. I'm going to share a closing prayer. Before I do, I just invite you to take a moment and think about who or what you may be praying for today. Who's on your mind today? Sometimes even naming them out loud during the moment of silent prayer is itself a way of lifting those people up. So with those people on our minds, let us pray. God, for this time of worship, we are so grateful. Although we all long to be back in this special place together, we know that these few moments every week draw us back into a sense of community. And for a short time, we are one again. A community of love, compassion, justice, and peace. May what we have listened to and learned today carry us into the week ahead. But even more than the words and music, may the spirit of worship surround us. A spirit gentle and kind, holding us always in love. For we know that when we center ourselves in your love for us, we can find the courage and the strength to meet each new day. We now take a silent moment to think of who we are specifically praying for today. As we name those people, may we enfold them with the spiritual and healing energy of our love for them. Hear our prayers. God, may the story of this week be a story that brings out the best in us. And may we strive each day to embody that message of hope. Looking beyond the clouds, may we always seek the sun and know its warmth and its will for better times. And hear us now as we continue in prayer, as we say together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Well, as always, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And I'd like to end by sharing with you the words of a blessing. And these words were written by Jamie Morrison. And it's called The Most Glorious Light. Within each of our hearts, there is a most glorious light. Go forth and let its spark help you understand what troubles both you and others. Go forth and let its light of reason be a guide in your decisions. Go forth and bring its ray of hope to those in need of help in both body and spirit, that they may find healing. Go forth and fan the flames of passion to help heal our world. Go forth and spread the warm glow of love, pushing back the darkness of the world. Go forth and share your glorious light with the world. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your long Victoria Day weekend, and I look forward to seeing you back here again next Sunday.